the Blue Horizon restaurant in Denver, a venue chosen for its discreet elegance and exquisite cuisine. Emma and Jonathan had just raised their glasses to celebrate their anniversary, but the sound of the clinking glasses sounded more like a warning than a celebration. Emma looked around with an uneasy gaze while Jonathan maintained a mysterious expression, almost as if he were acting out a prepared script. "You don't seem very happy, honey. Did something happen to the food?" Jonathan asked, leaning toward the table with a fake smile, but his eyes weren't as friendly as the smile on his lips. "Jonathan, I feel like someone's watching me. Have you noticed anything strange tonight?" Emma whispered, her gaze scanning the entire restaurant with concern, her deep voice weighed down by an inexplicable sense of anxiety. Jonathan responded with a calm smile, trying to dispel the tension. "Honey, we're just having a nice meal. Relax and try to enjoy it. Everything's..." He reached across the table, trying to comfort Emma with a gentle touch. Emma tried to smile, but the uneasiness wouldn't leave her. She picked up her fork and tried to focus on her food, but each bite was a battle against the nausea that was slowly creeping up on her. "I don't think the prawns here are very fresh," she said, placing the fork back on her plate with a slight clatter. "Let me call the waiter. They might bring something you like better." Jonathan suggested discreetly, signaling one of the waiters. The service at the restaurant was extremely professional, but Jonathan's worried gaze clearly showed that he was watching Emma struggle with her growing discomfort. As the waiter approached, Emma leaned against the table, her pale face contrasting with the warm glow. "I don't feel well, Jonathan. Something's wrong, not just the shrimp," she said in a soft voice, almost drowned out by the sounds of conversation and laughter around us. "Does the lady need anything? Can I help you?" The waiter interjected with professional concern, his eyes shifting between Emma and Jonathan. Jonathan squeezed Emma's hand, trying to convey reassurance. "Please bring me a glass of water and maybe some anti-nausea medication, quickly," he ordered, his voice calm but his eyes betraying his growing fear. "Of course, sir," the waiter replied quickly, turning away to carry out the order. Emma tried to calm herself, taking deep, sharp breaths. "Jonathan, I feel like this is more than just a simple illness. My whole body is reacting," she tried to say but couldn't finish, her breathing coming fast and shallow. "We'll take care of you, no matter what," Jonathan insisted, squeezing her hand. The other diner's eyes began to turn toward them as Jonathan took his wife's hand. Emma felt a final glimmer of consciousness. "Jonathan, why?" she whispered before the darkness engulfed her completely. Jonathan held her hand with an urgency that held more than just concern. He looked around in panic, noticing the other diner's eyes on them, a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Please keep yourself with me," Jonathan pleaded, his voice choked with tension. He waved loudly for the waiter, who returned with a glass of water and a small first aid kit. The waiter, clearly concerned, set the glass of water on the table and opened the first aid kit, looking for something that might help. "We have antacids and allergy pills here, sir. You might have an allergic reaction to shrimp, right? Maybe they can help you until we get to the hospital." Jonathan looked at the waiter hurriedly, his hands shaking as he took the antacid and handed it to Emma. "Give it to her, quickly," he ordered, his authority leaving no room for hesitation, and he managed to place the pill against Emma's pale lips. Emma struggled to swallow, her consciousness shifting between light and dark. She opened her eyes briefly, looking at Jonathan with confusion and fear. "What's happening to me?" she moaned, her voice weak, barely audible over the growing whispers of the other diners. Jonathan stroked her face, trying to smile reassuringly without showing the fear in his eyes. "It's okay, honey. I'm here with you. We're going to the hospital now," he said, turning to the waiter who was still standing beside them with obvious concern. "Call an ambulance immediately and get someone to control the crowd." We need space. Jonathan's voice was firm despite the chaos. The waiter nodded and turned away, taking out his phone as he began to give orders to the other restaurant staff. Emma, meanwhile, had sobered a little, gripping Jonathan's hand with surprising strength. "Jonathan, you don't understand. This isn't right," she said in a trembling voice. "I know, honey," Jonathan replied, his eyes scanning the restaurant as if searching for someone or something that could be the cause of this situation. "But I'm here. We will not let this defeat us." Around them, the restaurant had transformed from a place of celebration and joy to a place of anxiety and fear. Other diners stood up, some coming forward to offer help, while others watched from a distance, whispering their concerns. "Everyone, please remain where you are. Help is on the way," the waiter called out, trying to maintain order. But the tension only grew as Jonathan held Emma's hand tightly as he waited for the ambulance to arrive. He murmured words of comfort, but his mind raced, replaying every moment of the night, trying to understand where it had gone wrong. The situation at the Blue Horizon was rapidly deteriorating. Jonathan held Emma's hand firmly, her breathing becoming more uneven and labored. The whispers of the surrounding diners turned into worried voices as all eyes focused on the unfolding. In front of them, Jonathan was having trouble breathing. Emma's voice was weak, barely a whisper as she struggled to breathe. Her eyes widened in fear as reality slowly settled in around her. "It's me, Emma." "Hold on." Jonathan tried to stay calm, but concern was evident on his face. He looked around the restaurant, hoping to find more help while they waited for the ambulance. "She's not really allergic?" a waiter asked, as he assessed Emma's breathing. "She might be going into anaphylactic shock. We need epinephrine now." Jonathan nodded quickly and pointed to the waiter, who rushed to the kitchen as the restaurant's first aid kit, usually reserved for celebrations, had become the scene of a medical emergency. The waiter quickly shouted to another employee, "Epinephrine." As the waiter disappeared to search for medication, Emma began to convulse slightly, her uncontrolled movements adding to the urgency of the situation. Jonathan struggled to keep Emma's airway open. "What's going on?" he asked, supporting his wife through the contractions. Confusion and panic were evident in his voice. "You'll be fine. We're doing everything we can," Jonathan told Emma, his voice shaking as he held her, trying to stabilize her. He couldn't help but glance around the bar, hoping the waiter would return with a solution. Finally, the waiter returned with an epinephrine auto-injector. Her breathing labored and her face flushed. Without hesitation, Jonathan quickly grabbed the syringe, readying it and applying it to Emma's thigh, hoping that the medication would quickly stabilize her breathing. After a few tense moments, Emma's breathing still wasn't steady. She was still weak and pale. "The ambulance is coming." "Hold on," Jonathan reassured her, trying to hide his uncertainty about what was going on. The ambulance finally arrived to take Emma to the emergency room. Jonathan knew she was close to death and she would need intensive medical care at the hospital. He said gravely to one of the paramedics, "The epinephrine didn't work. My wife isn't allergic to shrimp." Jonathan explained that it must have been a sudden illness as Emma was wheeled into a wheelchair. He followed her in the ambulance, promising Emma that everything would be okay. The ambulance's siren pierced the quiet of the night as it sped through the streets of Denver toward the nearest hospital. Jonathan sat next to Emma in the back of the ambulance, holding her hand, the touch growing more fragile with each passing minute. Her face, illuminated by the flickering lights from the warning lights, looked pale, making him even more worried. "You hear me? We'll be there soon," Jonathan said, trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring. Emma just nodded, her eyes glazed over, trying to stay awake. The paramedic beside Emma monitored her vitals, adjusting the oxygen flow. "We're doing everything we can to keep you stable," he commented, noticing Jonathan's growing anxiety. The hospital is ready to take you as soon as we get there." Jonathan looked at the paramedic with a mixture of gratitude and despair. Emma had never had a medical problem like this before, never had any allergies. He muttered to himself more than to anyone else in the ambulance. The ambulance turned another corner, getting closer to the hospital. The speed of the ride made everything blurry in Jonathan's mind, only thoughts revolving around the cause of Emma's condition. When they arrived, the medical team was already standing by the emergency end. Emma was quickly wheeled into a wheelchair and rushed inside, while Jonathan followed, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. "Please let me come with you," he pleaded with the nurses. "You can follow her to the waiting room. We'll take care of her." A nurse replied and guided him down a brightly lit hallway to a space where other families were waiting for news of their loved ones. Jonathan felt as if the minutes were stretching out, replaying every detail of that night in his head, trying to find some sign he might have missed that could explain Emma's sudden collapse. How did this happen? He wondered over and over, his mind unable to stop, racing through the rapid succession of events. "Sir, the doctor will update as soon as he has more information," the nurse announced. Noticing Jonathan's distress, she offered him a drink, and he took it automatically, though his eyes were still glued to the door where Emma had disappeared. Jonathan stood up, pacing the waiting room with each step, feeling a mixture of anger and helplessness. Time seemed to drag on forever, each minute feeling like hours. He paused, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath, trying to find some peace in his heart. Meanwhile, Ashley, a hospital housekeeper, was quietly walking down the hallway near the operating room when a loud noise began. Doctors rushed into the emergency room where a woman had just been brought in. The professionals all wore tense, focused expressions. Ashley couldn't help but hear the rapid, urgent orders they exchanged. "Blood pressure is still dropping. We need more blood bags now," a doctor shouted as nurses hurried to The emergency room door opened and closed repeatedly, allowing a glimpse of the chaotic scene. Ashley pushed her cart against the wall to make way, but curiosity kept her there. She recognized the worried gaze she had seen many times before, but there was something about the urgency tonight that was different, more desperate. Inside the room, doctors moved around Emma with frantic efficiency. "She's not responding to treatment." A young doctor's voice was clearly frustrated. "Try another dose of epinephrine." Ashley watched for a moment, her protective instinct signaling that something was wrong. "The patient is dying. There's nothing more we can do," another doctor said. Ashley recalled a similar incident that had occurred a few years ago in her community. On a strong feeling, she quickly searched her cart, pulling out a bottle of antidote that she had kept and forgotten in her bag. She always carried emergency medications and bandages. Without hesitation, she entered the room, surprising everyone in the room with her presence. "I have something that might help," Ashley shouted, holding the bottle. The head doctor looked at her, initially surprised, then annoyed at the interruption. "This is an antidote to a specific poison," she explained quickly, aware of the pressure of the situation. The head doctor hesitated, his expression a mixture of doubt and desperation. "Do something," he said, his eyes dropping to the vial Ashley had handed him. Ashley's heart pounded in her chest as she rushed through the sterile corridors of St. Michael's Hospital. The overhead lights flickered slightly, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. She could feel the urgency in her veins, driving her forward with a determination that left no room for doubt. Reaching the intensive care unit, she found Emma lying motionless on the bed, her skin pale and her breath shallow. The room was thick with tension, the hum of machines and the soft beeping of monitors, the only sounds breaking the oppressive silence. "She's dying," Ashley whispered, her voice trembling but firm. She turned to the attending doctor, Dr. Hernandez, whose expression mirrored the gravity of the situation. His eyes met hers, searching for reassurance. Ashley pressed on, her words cutting through the tension like a lifeline. We need to act now. She won't hold on much longer. Dr. Hernandez cried heavily, the weight of his responsibility evident in his weary gaze. Reluctantly, he nodded and handed her the small vial containing the antidote. Ashley approached Emma's bedside, her hands steady despite the chaos swirling around her. She changed at Emma's strained features, her mind racing through every possible outcome. With a deep breath, she carefully administered the antidote into Emma's IV line, watching as the clear liquid entered the bloodstream. The next few seconds seemed to stretch into eternity. Every person in the room watched the monitors with bated breath, eyes darting between the fluctuating numbers and Emma's fragile form. Slowly, Emma's vital signs began to stabilize. Her breathing became more regular, the erratic spikes in her heart rate smoothing out. Gradually, color returned to her cheeks, and a faint blush softened her previously pale complexion. A collective sigh of relief filled the room, the tension dissipating like morning mist under the sun's warm rays. Incredible, Dr. Martinez, one of the senior doctors murmured, turning to Ashley with a mix of admiration and surprise. How did you know? Ashley managed a tired smile, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the wake of Emma's recovery. Sometimes it's just instinct, she replied softly. She had taken a significant risk, deviating from protocol, but seeing Emma pull, the relief she felt was palpable, a testament to her unwavering commitment to saving lives. As the doctors resumed their efforts with renewed energy, Ashley took a moment to step back. She changed at the patient chart, reading Emma's name once more, etching it into her memory. "I'll keep you in my prayers," she whispered, a personal vow to never forget the lives she touched. The following morning, Ashley arrived at the hospital with a sense of accomplishment lingering in her mind. However, the atmosphere inside had emphasized dramatically. The corridors, usually bustling with activity, now feel heavy and oppressive. Whispers and sideways glances followed her as she made her way to the director's office. The hospital director, Mr. Caldwell, was known for his stern demeanor and strict adherence to rules. As Ashley approached his office, she felt each step grow heavier, the anticipation of what was to come weighing her down. Mr. Caldwell sat behind his large mahogany desk, his piercing eyes fixed on Ashley as she entered. The room was impeccably organized, every item in its place, a stark contrast to the turmoil Ashley felt inside. "Ashley," he began, his voice firm and unyielding, "your actions last night were extraordinarily brave but extremely reckless. You are not a licensed physician, nor are you authorized to administer medication." Ashley stood her ground, swallowing hard. "I understand, sir, but I couldn't just watch while Emma died. I knew that antidote could save her." Mr. Caldwell leaned forward, his expression unchanging. "The rules are in place for a reason. Your unauthorized intervention could have had dire consequences. We cannot afford such risks." Ashley's heart sank. "But I saved her life. Isn't that what matters?" The director shook his head, his disappointment evident. "Your intentions aside, you overstepped your bounds. We can no longer have you working here. You are dismissed from your duties." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Dismissed? But I saved her life," she protested, her voice cracked under the weight of emotion. Mr. Caldwell stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "I'm sorry, Ashley." As she left the office, Ashley felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The hospital halls, once familiar and comforting, now seemed alien and unwelcoming. A mix of relief for having saved a life and fear of an uncertain future churned within. How am I going to pay my bills? What will I do now? She wondered, her mind racing with the implications of her dismissal. Walking down the corridor, the echoes of her footsteps mirrored the turmoil inside her. Passing through the waiting room, She locked eyes with a man anxiously awaiting news about his wife's health. For a fleeting moment, Ashley felt tears welling up. The thought of never working at the hospital again threatened to overwhelm her. She had dedicated years of her life to St. Michael's, forming bonds with patients and colleagues alike. The man approached her with a stern expression. "You're Ashley, right? I'm Jonathan, Emma's husband. I heard what you did yesterday in the operating room." His voice was low, thick with barely contained anger. "What were you thinking? You could have killed Emma with your irresponsibility." Ashley took a step back, taken aback by the intensity of his reaction. "I really believed I was helping. I knew the antidote could make everything okay after administering it." Jonathan's frustration only grew. "You're not a doctor. You have no right to make medical decisions. Your actions were reckless and unacceptable. You could have..." The words pierced Ashley more deeply than the director's dismissal. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she fought to keep them at bay. "I understand. I'm sorry," she murmured, feeling small and isolated in the murmur-now-filled corridor. Jonathan gave her one last severe look before turning and walking towards the patient rooms, leaving Ashley alone with her pain and the weight of her impulsive decision. Each step she took towards the hospital exit felt heaviest, the cost of her actions echoing with every footfall. Raised in a family of traditional healers, Ashley had inherited a deep understanding of alternative medicine and healing practices. She knew what she was doing. The doctors had already given up on Emma, and if she had stood by, the woman would have. Despite the harsh words from Jonathan, she did not regret her actions. It was a life she saved, much like the women in her family had done millions of times before. As she crossed the hospital doors for the last time, a sense of desolation settled over her. The once familiar building now seems like a symbol of her loss and the boundary she had crossed. However, a lingering suspicion began to gnaw at her conscience. Standing at the entrance, she replayed the events in her mind, a seed of doubt taking root. What if Emma's crisis was more than just an allergic reaction? What if someone had intended to harm her, and the antidote would only work in cases of poisoning? Ashley's inherited knowledge from her lineage of healers made her question the true nature. Had there been something more sinister at play? When Ashley heard the symptoms, she immediately recalled several cases she had seen in her family community. The antidote had worked for many different conditions, but this girl's reaction seemed like she had been poisoned. Unable to ignore the doubt that was forming in her heart, Ashley decided not to stop. She turned and looked up at the large hospital building, its imposing facade now a giant indifferent to the small tragedies that took place every day in its hallway. If someone tried to kill her, they'll try again once they know she's alive. I can't let this happen. I can't let them try again, she whispered to herself, deciding to act before it was too late. Ashley turned and returned to the hospital. She went into the locker room and put on the nurse's uniform she saw hanging on the hook. Remembering that nurses kept their clothes in hospital lockers, she donned a surgical mask and glasses that hid her. On the outside, she looked confident, but inside her heart was pounding with fear and urgency. She deftly avoided familiar faces, avoiding direct contact as she headed toward Emma's room. "God, I hope I'm making the right decision. Help me save," Ashley prayed, not hesitating as she approached the woman she had saved. When she entered the room, she saw Emma alone, looking frail but stable, an image that both comforted her and added to her urgency. "Emma," she began, approaching the bed gently. "My name is Ashley. We don't have time to talk right now, but I need you to trust me. You're not safe here." Emma looked at Ashley with half-closed eyes, a hint of surprise. "Ashley, who are you? What's going on?" Her voice was shaky but papery. "We don't have time to explain right now, but I think someone tried to take your life. They might try to hurt you again. I'm going to get you somewhere safe," Ashley said. checking the hallways from the corner of her eye before starting to disconnect Emma from the monitoring devices with trained but slightly shaky hands. Despite her confusion, Emma seemed to trust Ashley and didn't scream. Ashley quickly arranged a wheelchair, helped Emma into it, and began to push her out of the room. Every turn in the hallway felt like a millennium. Every glance from another patient seemed like a potential threat. When she reached the service exit, used primarily by staff for deliveries and less frequent procedures, Ashley glanced around to make sure the path was clear. "We're almost there," she whispered, more to herself than to Emma, as she pushed the wheelchair toward the street where her car was parked. Inside the car with Emma in the back seat, Ashley started the engine and drove away from the hospital. Her heart was pounding. "I'll take care of you. I'll figure out what's going on," she promised as she drove toward her small house, a temporary shelter but one that currently provided the safety Emma needed. As the city passed by the car window, Ashley felt the weight of her decision. She knew the consequences could be dire, but the belief that she was doing the right thing kept her grounded. This is a race against time. Ashley was determined to protect Emma at all costs, even though she didn't know who they were facing. She guided the car through quiet streets until she reached a small house in a modest part of town. The simple building with a small garden in front seemed like a sacred place, far removed from the chaos of the hospital. Emma lay in the back seat, still weak, but the worried look in her eyes softened a bit with the promise of safety. Once they arrived, Ashley helped Emma into the house and made her comfortable on the bed. "You can rest here. I'll take care of you," Ashley said, covering Emma with a light blanket. The simplicity of the place seemed to welcome the sick woman, who observed everything with tired but curious eyes. "Thank you, Ashley. But why are you doing this? Who are you really?" Emma asked, her voice still weak but filled with gentle urgency, the question reflecting the absurdity of the situation. Ashley sat beside her, hesitating for a moment before answering. "I come from a family of healers. I grew up studying herbs and antidotes. When I heard about what was happening to you in the operating room, something told me this was more than just a simple allergic reaction. I couldn't stand by while the doctors tried to, so I took action. The hospital director didn't like what I was doing and fired me. But if I was right, you could be in danger, so I needed to bring you here." Ashley explained, her eyes averted for a moment, as if still surprised by her own boldness. Emma listened intently, a hint of admiration appearing on her face. "So now you're out of a job because of me," she whispered, guilt echoing in her words. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You saved me." "Thank you," Emma said. "I choose to help you," Ashley quickly replied with a small smile to soften her words. "But I'm worried about what happens next. I need to find out who did this to you before they try again." Emma nodded, and over the next few days, Ashley cared for Emma, giving her tea and homemade remedies, watching her grow stronger and stronger. The hospital had announced that the patient had escaped, so Ashley knew she had been careful when she got out, and that Emma would be safe now that no one knew where she was. One quiet afternoon, as they drank tea in the kitchen, Emma began to tell Jonathan more about her life. After Ashley told him about our fight at the hospital, he was so concerned. "Jonathan must have been very worried about all of this. I'm sorry for the way he spoke to you. He was just scared," Emma explained. Emma continued to explain to Ashley, "I feel really uncomfortable at work. The looks, the whispers, as if someone is always trying to put me down." Emma confided, looking out the window with a distant gaze. Ashley listened carefully to every detail, her heart growing more and more worried. "Is there someone at the company who has a reason to harm me?" she asked, trying to find out without pressing too hard. Emma sighed, a shadow of doubt appearing on her face. "I don't know, but there is someone, Deborah, who has always wanted my position. She has never made a secret of it. Sometimes I think she would do anything to push me out of the company." Ashley pondered the potential threats without revealing the complexity of her own suspicions. It's important to consider all possibilities, Emma. We need to be careful, she advised, feeling the weight of the responsibility she was shouldering. For the next few days, as Emma slowly recovered, she and Ashley spent hours discussing a variety of topics, from happy memories to the challenges they were facing. The conversations flowed naturally, and Ashley's home was filled with laughter and occasional tears. One night, while preparing dinner together, Emma began to talk more about her interactions with Deborah. She's always been very competitive, and lately she seemed even more tense, like she's planning something. She knew I was having dinner with my husband and that I was happy. She even offered me a glass of champagne to celebrate. I found the sudden change in her behavior strange. Ashley, chopping vegetables, paused for a moment to digest this information. A subtle suspicion began to form in her mind, though she tried not to jump to conclusions. Yeah, of course, it seemed like a peaceful moment. It was strange that she was suddenly so nice to me, Emma replied, not realizing where Ashley's thoughts were going. The conversation left Ashley deep in thought. As the two women shared their meal, Ashley's mind raced, thinking about her next steps. She knew she needed to be careful, especially now that suspicions were pointing in a direction she had never considered before. As Emma continued to recover in Ashley's modest home, the maid became increasingly fascinated by everything her new friend said. One morning, after making sure Emma was well enough to be left alone, Ashley decided it was time to take action. I'm going to do some investigating today, she told Emma as she prepared breakfast. We need to get a better idea of what really happened. Emma nodded nervously but gratefully. Be careful, Ashley. I don't know who or what is behind all this, but I feel like whoever did it is dangerous. Ashley dressed conservatively, choosing clothes that wouldn't draw attention, and headed to the company where Emma worked, determined to investigate Deborah without leaving a trace. Once there, she pretended to be an outside HR consultant, conducting an employee satisfaction survey, a pretext that would allow her to gain access to the company's floors without raising suspicion. Throughout the visit, Ashley carefully observed the work environment, noting the tension on the faces of the employees, perhaps reflecting the competitive atmosphere Emma had described. After some searching, Ashley finally found Deborah in a meeting through a frosted glass door. Deborah seemed engrossed in a discussion, her animated gestures reflecting her competitive nature. Ashley waited patiently until the meeting ended, then approached Deborah with a combination of politeness and assertiveness. Hi, I'm an HR consultant, and I'm here to get a better understanding of the work environment. Can I have a moment of your time? Ashley offered, maintaining her false pretense. Deborah, surprised but always ready to impress potential consultants, agreed. Of course, come into my office, she said. As they walked, Ashley began asking general questions about the company culture, carefully observing Deborah's body language and reactions. There was no immediate sign of guilt in Deborah's behavior. She spoke of her passion for her work and her ambitions, but there was a cold, calculating edge to her words. How do you handle competition here? Ashley probed, watching Deborah's reaction. Deborah chuckled, a polite response prepared in advance. This is clearly a competitive environment. Of course, we all want to get ahead, but I believe in playing fair. Sometimes people misunderstand my ambition. Ashley thanked Deborah for her time and left the company with more questions than answers. On the way back, she thought about her encounter with Deborah. Deborah did not seem like someone who would commit a crime, but there was something in her voice that made Ashley feel uneasy. Maybe it wasn't her, or maybe she was just really good at hiding it, Ashley thought, deciding that she needed more information before drawing any firm conclusion. When she returned, Ashley shared her observations with Emma, who listened attentively. It's hard to say, Ashley. Deborah was always ambitious, but to do what you suspect, I don't know. They both knew they needed more evidence before they could truly understand what was going on. After sharing her findings about Deborah with Emma and finding no concrete evidence of her guilt, Ashley began to question other possibilities. Her conversation with Emma left her feeling uneasy. Jonathan's constant knowledge of Emma's workplace challenges and his protective behavior could be more than just marital concern. Determined to explore every angle, Ashley decided it was time to take a closer look at Jonathan. "Maybe we're missing something," Ashley whispered as she planned her next move. Despite being dressed conservatively, Ashley followed Jonathan one day after he left for work, keeping a safe distance and wearing sunglasses and a hat to avoid recognition. Jonathan looked like a normal person on his way to work, but Ashley sensed something was wrong. Ashley was not fooled by the casualness as Jonathan entered the office building. She stood outside the door, contemplating her options. After a few minutes, Ashley decided to go inside, pretending to be lost. Inside, she spotted Jonathan talking on the phone in the cafeteria in the main lobby of the company from a distance. Although she could not hear the conversation, Jonathan's serious expression and tense demeanor suggested that the matter was serious. Waiting for him to leave, Ashley approached the front desk, ordering a coffee while trying to catch fragments of the conversation on the phone. Jonathan mentioned making sure everything was taken care of and leaving no trace, adding that he was talking to a lawyer about wills and important documents for a possible defense. Ashley felt cold when she heard these words. She continued to watch as Emma's husband ended the call and returned to the parking lot. Instead of heading to her office after the frustrating but still determined conversation, Ashley focused back on Jonathan. She followed Jonathan and got into her car, parked near Emma's husband's, noticing that he was examining something in the trunk. Curiosity winning over caution, Ashley watched closely to see what he was handling. Jonathan pulled out a small vial and a set of documents before Ashley could get a better look. She was forced to hide when Jonathan began to look around, clearly feeling watched. When Jonathan finally returned to the office, Ashley decided to carefully inspect what he had handled in the car. She took a handkerchief from her pocket to avoid damaging the evidence and opened the trunk. Inside, she found a medical prescription and a note with Emma's name on it. The prescription was for a substance that could easily be used to poison someone, especially when mixed with alcohol. Now, with evidence that could be used against Jonathan, Ashley finds herself torn. Did someone set a trap to smear him, or was he really trying to hurt Emma? The uncertainty shakes her faith. After finding the damning evidence in Jonathan's car, Ashley acts quickly. First, she contacts the police to present the bottle and prescription medication she found, explaining her suspicions and how she discovered it. The officers, recognizing the seriousness of the evidence, agree to continue their investigation and promise to arrive at the scene immediately. When the police leave, Ashley returns home to find Emma still enjoying the peace of her temporary home, unaware of her latest discovery. "Emma, I found something very serious that the police need to see, and they want to hear from you too," Ashley explains, trying to prepare her friend for the impact of the upcoming revelations. The interrogation room at the police station was filled with tension, the air heavy with anticipation for the upcoming confrontation. Emma sat rigidly in a metal chair, a ghost of herself, trembling slightly as she waited for Jonathan to enter. Ashley was by her side, a comforting presence amid the storm of emotions. When Jonathan entered with an arrogant posture, his face was masked in a calculated calm. When he saw Emma, a moment of hesitation passed before he resumed his control, appearing carefree. "Emma, this whole thing with the police is dramatic. Even for you," he began sarcastically, trying to lighten the situation with a nonchalant attitude. Emma, though shaken, found the strength to respond in a shaky but indignant voice. "Jonathan, They found things in your car, things that will hurt me. Tell me it's a mistake. Please tell me that, she said with a smile that wasn't warm on her face. Jonathan leaned a little closer to Emma. Emma, always so sweet and innocently hopeful. He said, the impatience in his voice quickly fading. Yes, I planned everything meticulously. Why would I stay with you if there was no benefit? The money from your will be my freedom. His words were like a sharp knife cutting deep into Emma's heart. Why, Jonathan? Why did you do this to me? I love you, she whispered, tears starting to stream down her face. Love, Emma, is just a tool for people like me. A useful tool to keep women like you trusting people like me. It's easy to deceive you. I just wanted money. I never loved you. Everything was going perfectly until that maid came along and ruined everything. I was so convincing that even I was impressed. Jonathan responded with cold cruelty, laughing at the pain reflected in Emma's eyes. I may have been arrested, but I still have the right to take your money. As your husband, I just wanted to speed things up and not have to see you anymore to get what I wanted. Money. The police intervened immediately. An officer stepped forward. That's enough. Jonathan Carvalho, you're under arrest for malicious wounding. You have the right to remain silent, he declared as he placed the cuffs on Jonathan's wrists. Jonathan, however, seemed unmoved by his impending arrest. Look, Emma, in the end, we both do what we need to survive. I just play the game better than you. I'll be rich soon enough with your money. There's no point in reporting me, he said arrogantly before being led out of the room. Emma turned to Ashley for comfort in her friend. How could I have been so blind, not realizing who he really was? She asked, her voice broken with betrayal and pain. However, deep down inside, Emma began to remember all the times Jonathan had put her down, verbally abusing her when they were alone, always careful not to do it in public to maintain a clean image. How could he be so cruel? How could I not realize this relationship wasn't normal? She wondered. Ashley held Emma's hand firmly. Sometimes we want to see the best in the people we love, but you're safe now. And that's the most important thing. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe, and you'll never be alone. You'll always have a friend. Ashley hugged Emma. Her friend looked at her with a tear rolling down her cheek. And now, how can I start rebuilding my life? One day at a time. Ashley replied softly. Today you took an important step in facing the truth. I'll be here to help you rebuild one step at a time. You're not alone. In the days following the confrontation at the police station, the legal process against Jonathan moved surprisingly quickly. Thanks to the abundant evidence and his confession during questioning, he was convicted of willful injury and other related crimes in the attempt to poison Emma. The punishment Jonathan receives is severe, reflecting the gravity of his actions. Although Emma is relieved by the sentence, she knows there is one final issue to address before she can close this painful chapter of her life. She asks Ashley to accompany her on a visit to the prison where Jonathan is being held. Ashley, always supportive, agrees without hesitation, fully understanding the importance of this meeting for Emma. At the prison, the meeting is staged with an air of tension present. Jonathan is brought into the visiting room handcuffed and looking much more tired than the last time. Emma sits across from him, her eyes filled with emotion, while Ashley stands by his side, ready to provide the support he needs. Emma and Jonathan's final conversation is not only the end of a painful relationship, but also the beginning of Emma's journey to recovery and self-discovery, with Ashley by her side. Emma had seen him for the last time. She took a deep breath, trying to muster the courage to face the man who had taken almost everything from her. Jonathan. In the silence, Emma began to speak, her voice firmer and stronger than ever. I'm not here for you. I'm here for myself. I need to say a few things so I can move on. Jonathan watched her, his eyes now more accepting. Emma, He tried to start, but Emma cut him off. No, Jonathan. You no longer have control over my time or my life. You made your choices and now you must live with the consequences." She clutched the divorce papers in her hands. "I'm here to tell you that I'm divorcing you. What's more, my attorney has used your every action as the basis for dividing your assets. You will have no part of the assets you've been craving." Jonathan listened to Emma's every word as if it had been thrown at him. He couldn't stop. Anger was evident on his face. However, Emma continued, her voice growing stronger and more fearless. "And one more thing, during all this time, there was someone who was always by my side, who really saved me not only physically but in every other way, Ashley." Ashley, the beautiful woman standing next to Emma, listened to her friend's emotional words. But she didn't expect what was going to happen next. Emma decided that only Ashley deserved to receive her share of the fortune. She turned to a friend beside her and said, "I'm going to give you a large sum of money, Ashley. Not only as a thank you, but as a recognition of your friendship and companionship." Emma handed Ashley a check, leaving her speechless. Jonathan, now completely exposed, bowed his head, fully aware of his complete loss. "Don't leave me, Emma. You don't know how cruel this place is. I can't leave you here for nothing," he argued, but his ex-wife ignored him and turned away. Emma and Ashley left the prison together, closing one painful chapter to open a new one. Outside the cold darkness of the prison, Emma looked into the eyes of Ashley, her new friend and guardian of her life. "Thank you, Ashley, for everything," Emma said. Ashley clutched the check, smiling emotionally. "We'll rebuild together, Emma." After the tumultuous events and heartbreaking truths that marked their lives, Ashley and Emma not only became stronger but also became agents of social change. Inspired by their traumatic experience, they decided to use what happened and their resources to support other women in need. Together, they founded a nonprofit organization called Safe Place, with a mission to provide support, resources, and legal aid to women facing domestic violence. One sunny day, Ashley and Emma were overseeing the renovation of a large house they had purchased with some of Emma's fortune. The house would be transformed into a shelter and recovery center for women and children from abusive homes. "What women can we help?" Emma asked, watching the house as each hammer blow and each stroke of paint transformed it into a home and a symbol of hope. "I know we can, Emma," Ashley replied with determination, taking Emma's hand. "Every woman we help is a victory. Every story we change is a step toward a better world." As the project progressed, Ashley and Emma began to build out the organization's programs, which range from psychological counseling to legal assistance, ensuring that women receive not only emotional support, but also the means to seek justice and independence. Opening day arrived, filled with anticipation and emotion. The house was packed with volunteers, donors, and local media, all eager to witness the fruits of Ashley and Emma's work. The pair cut a red ribbon at the main entrance, officially opening the safe. At the ceremony, Emma gave a moving speech. "This house is more than just bricks and steel. It is a refuge for those who have felt voiceless and helpless for too long. Here, they will find a safe harbor where they can begin to heal and rebuild their life." Ashley continued on the importance of community and union. "Our strength comes from our unity. Safe Place is not just about Emma and me, but about everyone here and everyone who supports from afar. Every little action adds up to a big change." As the day went on, more women reached out, sharing their own similar stories or wanting to be a part of the movement. The organization became a community icon, demonstrating the impact Ashley and Emma were making in the lives of many. Over time, Emma found true love with Ronald, who she met at a fundraising event for Safe Place. They built a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding, pursuing their mission to help others. Meanwhile, Ashley also found happiness with Matthew, a volunteer who came to contribute his management skills. Together, they grew the organization, advocating for public policies that protect and empower women in vulnerable situations. On the 10th anniversary of Safe Place, Ashley and Emma stood in the middle of a large community event. Decorated with banners and flowers, the event symbolized growth and youth. Children ran around the lawn, while women who had participated in the program shared their stories of overcoming adversity. Emma took the stage, her hands shaking not from nervousness but from deep emotion. "When I thought my life was over, I found a sister in Ashley. Together we have created a place where fear becomes strength, where silence becomes a voice." Ashley joined in, holding Emma's hand and continuing, "Each of you who has walked through our doors has taught us about courage, about struggle, and about the power of community. Our journey is made up of your stories, of your victories." Safe Place is not just a shelter. It is a movement, a powerful voice against domestic violence that has spread through conferences and intervention programs across the country. Jonathan remains behind bars, a distant shadow that no longer has a chilling influence on Emma's life. Meanwhile, Emma's life is thriving in ways she never imagined. She finds true love and builds a family based on mutual respect and understanding. Thanks to Safe Place, Emma and Ashley have not only rebuilt their lives, but also given hope and resources to many other women, turning their pain into motivation to continue fighting for a world where domestic violence no longer exists. In the years since Ashley and Emma met in their darkest moments, light has emerged, not only for them but for countless other women. Safe Haven has become more than a shelter, but a powerful movement against domestic violence, reverberating through conferences and rallies across the country. Jonathan remains in prison, a distant shadow that does not affect Emma's life, which is now thriving in ways she never imagined. In those dark days, she found new passion and purpose, building a life based on mutual respect and understanding. Ronald met her at an event that threatened Safe Haven, drawn to her strength and dedication to the mission. Together, they have built a relationship that is both romantic and empowering. Ashley has also found happiness in her marriage to Matthew, a volunteer who brings management skills to Safe Haven. Ashley and Emma's friendship remains strong. They become a family, celebrating 10 years of Safe Haven together with pride and hope for the future.